Hello everyone and welcome to the biology lecture series, and today we'll be discussing the topic transportation. Alright, so first I will give you a brief introduction about the transportation in plants, and then later on we will discuss about the transportation in animals. Alright, so in this session we'll be discussing about the transportation in the higher plants, how the transportation of the water as well as the food materials, which are the organic molecules, how the transportation of both of these takes place or occurs in the plants. Okay, and then we'll also discuss and we will also talk about some of the terms that is related to the transportation. So we will talk about the translocation. Okay, and then we'll discuss about the process known as transpiration. So transpiration is also involved in the transportation of the organic molecules as well as the water molecules. Okay, that's why we'll be studying the transpiration also. Because of the transpiration, the transportation of these materials occurs. So this is very important. Then we'll study about the importance and the type of the transpiration, and in the end we'll study about the vasculature, means the vascular system or the vascular tissues. So there are two kinds of vascular tissues, xylem and the phloem. We'll discuss about that also. So let's begin with this lecture. So first I'll give you a brief introduction about the transportation. So all living bodies, they need nutrients and they need oxygen. Okay. So every cell requires nutrients and the oxygen, and all the tissues also require this oxygen and these nutrients. And why they are required? To sustain the life. Okay. Now the transport of different materials as well as the gases is essential for both plants as well as the animals. So different materials, what are different materials? They can be nutrients, they can be vitamins, they can be minerals and salts. Okay. And the transport of the gases also. Which kind of gases? So gases can be carbon dioxide or oxygen. Mainly these are the gases. Okay. So oxygen is required for the tissues to carry out the metabolic activities. So during respiration, what happens? Oxygen is required during aerobic respiration. Okay. During the respiration, what happens? Substrates such as glucose. This glucose is oxidized and then it forms, it liberates energy in the form of ATP, and carbon dioxide is also released. All right. So now this oxygen is transported to the tissues, okay, with the help of some material. So this happens in the animals. Okay, I'm talking about the animals also. Here, oxygen is transported with the help of a carrier known as a blood. So this happens in animals. What happens in plants? We'll talk about this, how the exchange of gases and the material takes place. So basically, there is a process known as diffusion. Okay. So with the help of a process known as diffusion, and there is another process known as osmosis. So both these mechanisms are involved in the exchange of the gases as well as the in the exchange of the organic material. Okay. Now, unicellular organisms such as amoeba and paramecium. So these are unicellular organisms. They do not require the transport of any material. Okay, because they are single cell only. They are unicellular. They are made up of single cell. Okay, so there is no requirement of the transport of the material, because these organisms, they are in direct contact with the surroundings from where they obtain these nutrients. Okay, so if you talk about the amoeba is single cellular, paramecium is also single cellular, and they are in direct contact with their surroundings, so they can directly exchange the material with the help of either diffusion or osmosis. Okay, we have already studied about the you can say the excretion in amoeba and all. So what happens? The water is stored in the contractile vacuole, and then later on, the contractile vacuole expands, then it reaches the plasma membrane or the cell membrane, and then it bursts and releases the water. Okay. Now, these substances are distributed in the cytoplasm, okay, due to the streaming movement of the cytoplasm known as cyclosis. Okay, cyclosis is also known as cytoplasmic streaming. Okay, so cytoplasmic streaming is nothing but it is the movement of the cytoplasm, or you can see the streaming movement of the cytoplasm. It is also known as cyclosis, and the other name is cytoplasmic streaming. Okay, so all these substances, they are present in the cytoplasm. So if we talk about the amoeba, or if we talk about a particular cell, then all the substances, they are present in the cytoplasm and they move within the cell with the help of a phenomena known as cytoplasmic streaming. So organelles also, so organelles are present within the cell, they also move with the help of the process known as cytoplasmic streaming. Now, how they exchange the gases? They exchange gases from the external environment directly by diffusion. So exchange of gases takes place by the process known as diffusion. Okay, so in diffusion, what happens? There is a movement of the molecules from a region of higher concentration to lower concentration. So for diffusion, a concentration gradient is required. So for diffusion, a concentration gradient is required. All right. So movement of the molecule is from the higher concentration, or you can say a region with the higher concentration to the region with the lower concentration. So this is what happens in the diffusion, and diffusion of the or the exchange of gases takes place by the process known as diffusion, which is due to the difference in the concentration in and outside the body. Okay, so suppose if this is the body of the amoeba, okay, amoeba is irregular shape, this is the nucleus. All right, if here inside the concentration is higher, okay, and outside it is lower, then due to diffusion, the molecules will move outside. Okay, so a concentration gradient is required for diffusion to occur, and the exchange of gases takes place with the help of the process known as diffusion. Now, in higher organisms, both plants and animals, digested food, oxygen, hormones, waste nitrogenous substances. What are waste nitrogenous substances? These are urea, uric acid, and the another one is ammonia. So these are the nitrogenous waste material. These are carried from one place to the another. Okay, so transportation of material is very important, and it is done through the circulatory system in animals. Okay, where blood is involved. Okay, blood is a carrier, or it can be done with the help of vasculature or the vascular system. Okay, we call it vascular system in case of plants. Which consists of what? Which consists of xylem, and it also consists of the phloem. All right. Now let's talk about the transportation in higher plants. So in higher plants, they have specialized system for the transportation of the materials inside the body. Okay. The transportation of the material is carried out by the means of the vascular tissue. So here we are talking about the plants. So we'll talk about the vascular tissue. So these vascular tissues, I've already told you, consist of what? It consists of the xylem and the phloem. Now the vascular tissue acts as pipes or the vessels. Now through these vessels or the pipes, water, minerals, salt, food, these are transported in the body. Okay. Now in plants, the medium of transportation is water. So water is essential for the transportation. Along with the water, salts, vitamins, minerals, okay, hormones, vitamins, and you can say hormones also, these are transported along with the water. Okay, food is also transported along with the water. You can say food, or you can say the organic substances. Now, water and the food, they flow through the xylem as well as the phloem respectively. So water, the flow of water takes place with the help of the xylem. Okay, and the flow of food takes place with the help of phloem. Now, if we talk about the components of the xylem, it consists of tracheids, vessels, xylem parenchyma, and xylem fibers. So, what is the function of xylem fibers? They provide mechanical support to the plant. Their role is to provide the mechanical support. What is the role of xylem parenchyma? Xylem parenchyma, it helps in the storage. Okay, and then tracheids and vessels, these are involved in the transportation. The main transportation takes place with the help of, okay, tracheids and vessels. All right. And phloem consists of sieve tubes, companion cell, phloem fibers, and phloem parenchyma. Okay. Now these water and food, they are required for various metabolic activities. Now tracheids and the vessels, which are the part of the xylem, they are non-living parts of the xylem. While the sieve tubes and the companion cell, they are the living parts of the phloem. Okay. In phloem, the transport takes place with the help of sieve tubes in the companion cell. And in xylem, the transportation of water takes place with the help of tracheids in the vessel. Now, interstitial means the land plant, they absorb water and mineral salt through the roots. Now, the area of young roots where most of the absorption takes place is the root hair zone. Okay, so roots have root hairs. Okay, so these root hairs are the extension of the epidermal cells. Okay, so if this is the root, okay, you must have seen there are some root hairs present. All right, these root hairs, they are nothing but they are the extension of the epidermal cell. Now, root hairs are delicate and they do not live more than 2 days. So their life is just 2 days because they are very delicate. Now the root hair have sticky walls by which they adhere tightly to the soil particles. The root hairs, they absorb the water from the soil by the process known as osmosis. Okay, so exchange of gases was because of the process of diffusion, but the absorption of the water is by the process known as osmosis. Okay, and the transport of the or the absorption of the mineral salt is by the process known as diffusion. So how is osmosis different from diffusion? So osmosis, what happens? There is only transport of the solvent. Solvent is in liquid form, the water is in liquid form. So there is a transport of the water. You can say the solvent here is water from a region of low concentration of solute. So diffusion was from higher concentration of solute to lower concentration of solute. Here in osmosis you have this, there is a transport of the or the transfer of the solvent from low concentration of solute to higher concentration of solute. So it is the opposite of diffusion. Or in other terms, you can also say in osmosis what happens, there is a transport of the solvent from higher concentration of water. Okay, we are talking about the water here, not the solute. To the lower concentration of water. Clear? Now the water and the mineral salts, they are transported from roots to the leaves, okay, and the flowers and other parts of the plant. Now this upper movement of the cell sap, which contains the water and the minerals, through the xylem, it is known as the ascent of sap. Okay, so the essence of sap, which means the upper movement of the cell pep, this takes place through the xylem. All right, so this is an image showing you the ascent of the sap. So here you can see these are the roots. From the roots, okay, here the xylem is present. Okay, so the xylem is involved in the ascent of the sap. The xylem is present in the stem. Okay, and here you can see the upward movement towards the leaves. Okay, so what happens initially, we'll talk about this transpirational cohesion theory also. So due to the transpiration, a transpirational pull is created. Okay, so transpiration is the loss of the water in the form of vapors. So due to the loss of water by the process of transpiration, a transpirational pull is created, and this transpirational pull helps in the ascent of the sap. Okay, so first is the transpiration. Okay, this generates the transpirational pull. Okay, and this transpirational pull, it then causes the ascent of the sap. The other forces also, like cohesion and tension, we'll talk about this in the upcoming slides. Now let's talk about the translocation. So if we talk about the transport of the organic substances through phloem, then you use the term translocation. So phloem translocate the manufactured food, which is the sugar or the starch, from the leaves to the leaves of different parts of the plant, including the roots. Okay, the food or the organic material, which is in the form of the sugar or starch, these are transported with the help of the phloem. Now let's talk about another term, transpiration. I would also like to mention that the translocation that we were talking about, it is bidirectional, means it can move upwards as well as downwards. So upward towards the leaf and downwards towards the root. Now, most of the water absorbed is lost through the aerial parts of the plant into the air by the process known as transpiration. Now, 2% of the total water absorbed is used up in various metabolic activities. So, the water, okay, is absorbed by the plant, okay, and only 2% of that water is used for the metabolic activities. So, metabolic activities, or you can say the biochemical reaction that involves the enzymes, these require the presence of water. They take place in the presence of the water, and only 2% of the total water absorbed is used for the metabolic activities. Okay, so transpiration is very important here. As I have told you, transpiration generates a transpirational pull that helps in the ascent of the sap. Now, transpiration, how can you define? It is the loss of the water in the form of water vapor. Okay, so you can say loss of water in the form of water vapor. This is known as transpiration, or you can say through the aerial parts of the plant in the form of the water vapor. This is known as transpiration. Now, transpiration is loss of water from the living tissues of the aerial parts of the plant in the form of the water vapor. Now, there are three kinds of transpiration. First is the cuticular transpiration, which is through the cuticle. So, leaves have a thick covering known as cuticle that protects the leaves. The first one is the cuticle transpiration. Second is the lenticular transpiration, which occurs with the help of the lenticels. Okay, now what are lenticels? Lenticels, they comprise a porous tissue which is characterized by extensive intercellular gaps. So there are a lot of intercellular gaps in this tissue. Okay, they are present in stem and the roots, and lentil manifest as, so they are present as raised circular oval or elongated patches. So what are lenticels? They are raised circular oval and elongated patches that have intercellular gaps, and they are involved in the transpiration, and they are also involved in the exchange of gases. They are also involved in the exchange of the gases. Okay, and they are present in the stem, they are present in the roots, and they are also present in the fruits, also in the fruit wall also. Next is the stomatal respiration that takes place through the stomata. Stomata, you already know, they are the tiny openings, okay, that are present in the epidermis of the leaves. Okay, so this is a typical structure of a stomata of the dicot. So these are known as the guard cell. These are stomata are present in the epidermis. This opening is known as the stoma. Okay, this is how a stomata of a dicot plant looks like. In monocot, these guard cell, these are dumbbell shaped. Okay, so most of the transpiration takes place through the stomata. Okay, this is clear. Now let's move on to the importance of transpiration. Now it controls the rate of absorption of the water. This I've already told you. It is responsible for the essence of the sap. It regulates the temperature of the plant also. How it regulates the temperature of the plant? So what happens in high or in the dry conditions, or when the temperature is high, when the light intensity is very high, then the plant loses the water and this cools down the plant. Okay, and another one, the essence of the sap, or you can say transpiration, is responsible for the essence of the sap. So water, okay, is transported across the plant. So water is transported across the plants. All right, and then what happens? And this cools down the plant, or it maintains or it regulates the temperature of the plant. Now, the mostly water absorbed by the root is lost by the transpiration without serving any purpose. Okay, so transpiration, you know what is the importance? It generates the transpiration full, which helps in the ascent of the sap, and along with the water, the minerals and the vitamins and the nutrients, they are also transported across the plant. Okay, this is the importance, but most of the water absorbed is lost by the transpiration. So the energy spent by the plants in the transpiration is wasted. So a lot of energy is wasted. So that's why transpiration is known as a necessary evil. So it has some negative effect also. What are the negative effect? The loss of the energy. So most of the water absorbed is lost. But why it is necessary? Because it is involved in the transport of the, you can say, minerals and vitamins and minerals and salts, which takes place along with the water, and transpiration is required for the uptake of the water. That's why it is known as the necessary evil. Now let's study about the vasculature system. So the vasculature system, it consists of both xylem and the phloem. Xylem, I've already told you the components of the xylem. It consists of the tracheids and the vessels, which helps in the transportation, and it also consists of the xylem parenchyma and the xylem fiber. Phloem, it consists of the sieve tubes and the companion cell, which are involved in the transportation of the organic substances. Okay, xylem is involved in the transportation of the water. All right, and the term which you use here is translocation and not transportation. Translocation, here the term you use transportation. So if we talk about the xylem, Now xylem, they are the functional xylem cells. They are dead. Now it carries mineral salts, water and traces of the organic molecules, and the movement is only upwards, means it is only unidirectional. Okay. So the movement is only unidirectional, means only upwards, means from the roots towards the leaves. Okay. Now, if we talk about the phloem, the functional phloem cells are alive, whereas in case of xylem, it was dead. An organic solution of the sugars as well amino acids are translocated across the plant, and the movement can be both upwards and downwards. Upward means from roots towards the leaves. Okay. And downward movements means towards the roots. Towards the roots. Okay. Upward movement, you can see, I will like to correct here. Upward movement is from the leaves towards the apex, where the shoot is present. Okay. And downward movement is from the leaves to the roots. So here the movement is bidirectional. Now, the main loss of water is through the somatal transpiration. This we have already discussed. Now, let's talk about the turgor pressure. Turgor pressure in the mesophyll cells of the leaf, they forces water outwards through the cell wall. Okay. So, because of the turgor pressure that is developed in the mesophyll cells, there is the water is thrown out through the cell wall. Okay. Now the water evaporates from the surface of the cells into the air spaces of the spongy tissues and then passes into the outer atmosphere through the pores known as stomata. So what does this mean? This means first a turgor pressure is created within the cells, and because of this turgor pressure, the water is forced out to move out of these mesophyll cells. Okay, and when they move out of the cells, then what happens? The water evaporates, and they evaporate through where? Through the stomata. All right. So what is turgor pressure? Turgor pressure is the pressure exerted by the contents of the cell against the plant cell wall. Okay, so it is outside, pushing the plasma membrane outward. This is known as the turgor pressure. So if this is the cell, this is the nucleus, so turgor pressure acts outside towards the outer wall. Okay, and because of the turgor pressure, the water, or you can say the transpiration takes place. The water is forced to move out of the cells through the pores known as stomata, and then the water evaporates. The cell sap of the mesophyll cell, they become concentrated by losing the water. Okay, now the water is lost, so the cell sap, or you can say the cytoplasm of these cells, mesophyll cells, they become concentrated because of the lack of the water. Okay, and the turgor pressure then decreases. Now because of this, these mesophyll cells, they suck the water from the adjoining mesophyll cells, and these adjoining mesophyll cells then ultimately suck the water from the vascular tissue, which is the xylem here. Okay, and this is how the movement of water is taking place. All right. So if this is the mesophyll cell, this is another mesophyll cell. Okay. Then you have the vasculator system here. These are the xylem, which consists of the water. Then if this cell is concentrated, water will move here from this cell, and the water which is present in the xylem, this will then move in this cell. Okay, and then from this cell it will move into this one cell. So this is how the movement of water is taking place. All right. So here also there is a concentration gradient, because the cell sap of the mesophyll cell become concentrated. It lacks water, and the transport of water takes place here through the process known as osmosis. All right. So movement is water from here to here to this cell, and from this cell to this cell. And this takes place with the help of the phenomena known as osmosis. Now, this tension is then transmitted all the way down to the unbroken column of the water. Okay, so now we are studying the transpirational cohesion theory, also known as the transpirational pull theory. So what is happening here? First, because of the transpiration, the cell sap of the mesophyll cells, they become concentrated, and then the water from the adjacent cell is sucked by the other cell, and then a tension is created. Okay, so this tension is transmitted all the way down to the unbroken column of the water through the stem to the absorbing part of the root. So because of this tension, okay, which is generated why? Because of the transpiration, an unbroken column of water is created. So this unbroken column is very important for the uptake of the water. Okay, so the molecules of the water show cohesion. Cohesion means there is a mutual attraction, or you can say attraction between same molecules. This is known as cohesion. So there is attraction between water molecules. Okay, so this is known as cohesion, and the molecules of water and the wall. Okay, and the wall, this is known as adhesion. So there are two forces acting here. First is cohesion, another one is adhesion. Adhesion is between the water and the vessel. So adhesion, you can say the attraction between two different molecules. This is known as adhesion. So because of this cohesion and adhesion, an unbroken column of water is created. And this unbroken column of water is then pulled up because of the transpirational pull. Now, due to these adhesive and the cohesive forces, water column, the unbroken water column does not break, but is pulled upward by the force called as transpirational pull. Okay, so here what is happening? Due to transpirational pull is created. All right, and then this cohesion and adhesion forces, this helps in the development of a unbroken water column. Okay, and this water column is pulled upward with the force known as transpirational pull. So this is known as transpirational cohesion theory. Now the whole process can be compared with the person. Okay, so person is exerting a force, so transpirational pull. So you can say transpirational pull is a person which is pulling a bucket full of water. So this person is pulling a bucket full of water. So this bucket full of water, you can compare it with the forces that are acting on the water. So person is pulling the water. So it is exerting a force on the bucket, or you can compare this bucket full of water with the force on the water column. So the person is pulling the bucket from a well with the help of the rope. And this is known as the column of the water due to cohesion and adhesion. All right, this is clear. So this was all about the transpirational cohesion theory, or also known as the transpirational pull theory. So in this theory, what we studied, that first, due to the transpiration, a transpiration pull is generated. So what happens? This leads to the essence of the sap. How this leads to the essence of the sap? So initially, the cell sap of the mesophyll cells, they become concentrated. So because of this, they get concentrated, there is a concentration gradient now developed. So this cell will now suck the water from the adjoining cells, and that adjoining cell is in contact with the xylem. So it will then suck the water from the xylem. So a continuous column of water is required, that is prepared, or that is generated due to the cohesion and the adhesive forces. And this continuous column of water is then pulled with the help of the transpirational pull that is generated by the process of transpiration. This is clear. So this was the end of the session. We will talk about rest of the topics in the next lecture. Thank you very much.